Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. I hope you are still enjoying Women's History Month. Welcome to today's show, Madam C.J. Walker, On Her On Ground by Alelia Bundles. This is Brenda Johnson-Padgett, your host, here on A-Swift Radio. Today we will take a look at Madam C.J. Walker, her legacy, and contributions to the United States. To help us understand Madam C.J. Walker's legacy, we have Alelia Bundles joining us today. She is the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. Alelia, welcome to our show.
I'm delighted to be here.
Well, great. First of all, what we want to do, for those that do not know who Madam C.J. Walker is, can you just briefly describe and tell us about her?
Well, I think when people who do know about Madam Walker associate her with the hair care industry. She, in fact, was a pioneer of the modern hair care and cosmetics industry. But she also was an American rags to riches story, a woman who started out in life very poor and transformed herself into a businesswoman and a millionaire. She used her money and her influence and wealth to make a difference as a philanthropist, as a political activist, as a patron of the arts.
Great. Okay. And Alelia, when did you first know you were related to Madam C.J. Walker, and which side of your family are you related to her?
Well, I think I always knew on some levels, consciously and subconsciously, but it's my mother's side of the family. Madam Walker is my mother's great-grandmother. When I was a very little girl, before I really had any consciousness of the Walker women, I actually was touching things that had belonged to them. We moved to Indianapolis, where the Walker Company was located at that time and where my mother had grown up in 1955. And we stayed in my grandfather's apartment about a month before we moved into our house. And I stayed in a bedroom that had belonged to my grandmother, where there were items of clothing and jewelry and books and other photographs that had of Madam Walker and her daughter, Alelia Walker. So I was touching their things before I knew who they were. The silverware that we used every day at home had Madam Walker's monogram, CJW, on it. We had her china that we used on special occasions. The baby grand piano that I learned to read music on had belonged to her daughter. And my mother was vice president of the Walker Company when I was growing up. So I was conscious of it.
Oh, okay, great. Now, when did you start your journey to preserve your family history and to preserve the legacy of Madam C.J. Walker?
In high school, I really was more interested in Madam Walker's daughter, my namesake, Alelia Walker, who was very much a part of the Harlem Renaissance. In fact, Langston Hughes, in his book, The Big C, called her the joy goddess of Harlem's 1920s. And I was fascinated with her because I was a writer. From the age of 8, I loved to write. And she had known the key writers and musicians and artists of the Harlem Renaissance. So we had books in my grandfather's house that were signed by Langston Hughes and Count Cullen and other Harlem Renaissance writers. So I was really fascinated by her, and I wrote my first report about the Walker women on Alelia Walker during my senior year in high school during the 1960s, late 1960s, and was fascinated with that. My interest in Madam Walker, I was a little bit ambivalent about her. I was a child of the 60s who wanted an afro, and I think many people really associated Madam Walker with straightening hair, and I was kind of ambivalent about that until years later I discovered, of course, as I'm sure your viewers know, she did not invent the straightening comb. But I had to learn that myself and to learn about her other contributions. And then I became more interested in her. And it was really when I was in graduate school at Columbia in journalism school in the mid-1970s that I really began to do research about Madam Walker and her life as a businesswoman.
Great, great. Okay, now also I know you were preserving her legacy. In what ways are you preserving the legacy of Madam C.J. Walker? What are some of the ways you're preserving? Go ahead.
Sure. On so many levels we are doing things. The Madam Walker Theater Center in Indianapolis, which was the headquarters for the company when it was in its heyday, is now a National Historic Landmark and a cultural arts center. And I'm on the board there, and we honor entrepreneurs. We do cultural arts events. We have had entertainment in the building, everybody from Lena Horne and Smokey Robinson to Patti LaBelle and Michael Bolton, so that it really runs the gamut. We've had Chinese acrobats and Russian ballet, and Savion Glover, so opera and blues and comedy. So we really love to host people in that beautiful building. It's an African Art Deco theater that is just unlike anything you've ever seen, and one of the oldest Black-owned theater buildings in the country, and beautifully restored. So that's one way that we preserve the legacy. Of course, I write books and lots of public speaking. We worked on a Madam Walker stamp that came out in 1998. And I'm president of the Madam Walker, Alelia Walker Family Archives, which is the largest inherited and acquired collection of Walker photographs, clothing, business records, and other artifacts and memorabilia.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, now it is now 6 minutes past the hour, time for a commercial break. I'm Brenda Johnson-Padgett here on A-Swift Radio.
A-Swift Writer's Guild is for those who have the talent to put pen or brush to paper to create a unique and valuable piece of work. A-Swift is always looking for new talents to enhance the literary, visual, and performing arts. For more information on how you can become a member of A-Swift Writer's Guild, visit www.aswifttwritersguild.com or call 1-866-302-0508. A-Swift Radio, bringing you the best in radio, keeping you informed, and highlighting your day with Brenda Padgett, Eunice Bridges, and Galinda Fields on A-Swift Radio. Ambassador sent with information for this time. Tune in online to A-Swift Radio here at www.blogtalkradio.com/A-Swift Call us anytime off air at 1-866-302-0508, extension 3060. A-Swift Radio.
Welcome back to our show, Madam C.J. Walker on Her Own Ground by Alelia Bundles here on A-Swift Radio. I'm Brenda Johnson-Padgett, your host. We are talking with Alelia Bundles, who is the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. We left off with Alelia sharing how she is keeping the legacy of Madam C.J. Walker alive. Alelia, what other ways do you preserve Madam C.J. Walker's legacy, and what is the website to get more information?
You know, there's so many ways that where Madam Walker inspires other people, so I'm really fortunate to have a large palette. I can talk with people about her philanthropy, about her entrepreneurship, about her arts patronage, and I'm currently writing a new book about Madam Walker's daughter, Alelia Walker, and her life during the Harlem Renaissance. My other two books about Madam Walker, one is a young adult biography of Madam Walker called Madam C.J. Walker, Entrepreneur, and then the much more comprehensive book, and the first really comprehensive biography of her that I wrote is called On Her Own Ground, The Life and Times of C.J. Walker. And you can find out, people can find out more about that book and the other things that we're doing on my two websites and my Facebook page and my blog. But the websites are madamcjwalker.com. Madam is spelled without the E because that's the way she spelled it. MADAMCJWalker.com. And my website is the spelling of my name without my apostrophe, ALELIA, Bundles, BUNDLES.com. And then through those two websites, people can find a link to our blogs about the Madam Walker Family Archives and some of the other things that we're doing, as well as our Facebook page.
Okay, great. Okay, now, Alelia, what impact would you like to see on today's youth as a result of Madam C.J. Walker's life?
I think she's a wonderful example of being perseverant and having courage and overcoming obstacles. And I'm really glad that I do hear from so many young people who are doing reports about Madam Walker or enacting her in their presentations during Black History Month and Women's History Month. And it really does run the gamut. A wide range of kids, a very diverse group of kids are able to find something about Madam Walker that they can take a lesson from, whether it's being an entrepreneur, whether it's studying hard, whether it's learning about the world, whether it's being a generous person, being a philanthropist. So I'm really happy that young people are inspired by her.
Okay, great. Okay, now also, can you tell our listening audience how important it is to know their family history and their genealogy?
You're so right. While I'm fortunate that I have a family member or a couple of family members who were written about and were famous during their lives, but what I know is that every family has heroes. And it doesn't have to be somebody who was written about in the newspaper, that everybody has somebody who took that first step and led the family into a new direction. We read lots about the migration, people moving from the South to the North or moving from the West Indies to the United States. And now we're seeing that with the latest census that many people are moving back to the South. But my point is that everybody's family has a journey, and everybody's family has courageous people who are visionary enough to want something more for their family. I'm this very minute on Ancestry.com doing research for the new book that I'm writing about Alelia Walker. And I'm not just researching my family. I'm actually doing research about Alelia Walker's friends and their family members so that I can look at how these people arrived in Harlem. Everybody has an interesting story. So I really urge people to talk with the oldest members of the family as often as they can, videotape them, even if you have to pull out the cell phone and do a little quick video with the cell phone, but to get young people to be interested in speaking with their grandparents and really learning some of the family stories.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful advice, Alelia. What message do you feel your great-great-grandmother wanted to leave concerning entrepreneurship and financial literacy?
Well, first she would, it was very important to her that people become financially independent. She had been a woman who was widowed at a very young age and then with a daughter, and then she married a man who was not the best provider, and she saw that she had to make her own way. And so part of her impetus for developing her business was to help other women become financially independent. And it wasn't then just about making the money, it was about how one uses the money and what kind of legacy one leaves. So she was very active in her church. She was a member of St. Paul AME Church in St. Louis, and then as she moved from city to city, developing her business, she joined the church, and she was part of the Missionary Society. She saw the importance of generosity and of giving back. So she always urged others to do the same things. In fact, at her 1917 convention of her sales agents, the year before Mary Kay was born, she told the agents that, she said, I want you to understand that your first duty is to humanity. As Walker agents, I want others to look at us and realize that we care not just about ourselves, but about others. And at the convention, she gave prizes not just to the women who had sold the most product,